economist, although this topic doesn't look probably as conventional economic topic, but actually it builds on my previous work where I did a lot of research on the effect of ethnic diversity on economic performance in this country, because Bosnia and Herzegovina is especially interesting case in this respect. And what I will do here, I will combine the findings from the previous research with the informed findings which we got through as part of this project. I was part of the economic group in this project. We did also some other research like informal networking of entrepreneurs, cost of informal networking of entrepreneurs, etc. But I decided to present here today this topic because I think it's especially relevant for this country, but also for the Western Balkan region overall. Ethnicity in economics, as I said, unconventional topic, but actually we have quite a lot recent research which investigates the effect of different forms of ethnicity in economics, including all possible levels of analysis: macroeconomic level, mesoeconomic level, and also micro and individual level. What would be a sort of general finding? It is that ethnicity does matter in economics, but if we look at the published findings, actually the economic consequences of ethnic diversity remain mixed. They are not going only in one direction. We have sort of, let's say, positive studies finding positive effect of ethnic diversity, but also those who find negative or insignificant influences. So the idea is to investigate the socio-economic effects in the Western Balkans region with particular reference to Bosnia and Herzegovina. As scientists, we firstly looked at theory. Basically, we have two theoretical approaches. The first one is the approach which says that greater ethnic diversity increases the probability of ethnic tensions and conflicts, which in turn have a negative impact on economic incentives and economic performance in these societies. Simply, ethnic diversity's fractionalization, conflicts, and prejudices can override economic incentives, leading to poor economic choices, to suboptimal economic policies, and in the very end, to poorer economic performance and lower economic growth. So that's one theoretical approach. The second one is quite the opposite. This approach says, well, if you look today, the global economy, we can see that the most developed countries, regions, and cities today are ethnically diverse. The main argument here is that diverse ethnic mix may bring various abilities, different experiences, variety of cultures and traditions, spectrum of religious beliefs and practices, multi-dimensional ways of thinking, which together may lead the whole society towards greater innovation, creativity, and consequently to better economic performance. Simply, these societies, these regions, these cities, neighborhoods are economically more dynamic, which has a positive effect overall in this region. So if we look at the literature, we do have findings which identify positive consequences of ethnic diversity at the national level, regions, cities, productivity of individuals, and individual well-being. So what is interesting about this case? Well, if you look at the existing literature, this literature investigates mainly ethnic diversity in the context of ethnic heterogeneity is caused by immigration. So inflow of migrants into previously homogeneous areas. In the context of this country and this region, we have quite the opposite situation. So we investigate the economic consequences of change in the opposite direction, which is a shift toward homogenization in this country or in the region, and economic consequences of that. So in this respect, we have quite a unique research angle of the effect of ethnic diversity, and we want to see the effects on individuals, families, in terms that reduced ethnic diversity can affect these economic indicators. If we look this country, which is certainly the most interesting case, and if we take the data from two last censuses, which is 1991 pre-war and 2013, the latest census, so this is the municipal data. I've calculated so-called Herfindahl index of ethnic diversity change, which where 0 means there is no change in the ethnic diversity at municipal level. On the left-hand side, we will have increase in homogeneity. On the right-hand side, we will have increase in diversity. So what is the average value of this index? It's above 0.2, which means that on average, municipalities in these countries have over 20% of increase in homogeneity. Although we have differences between municipalities and a few where ethnic diversity has increased. The question which I ask is, what are the economic consequences of this change? On individuals, on families, on businesses, and on society. Too much research questions, I know, but I have done all of this over the last 6 years. So you will get one slide about each research. You can ask later on questions. This is published research, but what is the most interesting about these research questions is that they send very coherent message when I analyze these data at all these levels. And I analyze data at individual level. These are all representative data, scientifically proved, so published research. I analyze data from the business sector, young companies in these countries, because young companies are always interesting to economists. Why? Because if we want to see growth in the future, these new companies should grow. Because we have the current companies, but we need to get, let's say, economic stimulus from these young companies. I went a little bit into sociology. There are a lot of sociologists here, so I'm afraid that probably I will not use always proper terms because I'm an economist. But you might agree or disagree on my findings. But I have also a rich data set in which I try to analyze the effect of ethnic diversity on the society, basically. And I will present in the end the outputs of the Inform project from 2017. Okay, this is overambitious. I'm an applied economist. I'm not going to present tables, econometric analysis, although this is all applied research. But you can ask questions. So the effect of ethnic diversity on income in this country. So I analyzed earning functions for individuals and families in BH. I included typical economic indicators plus ethnic diversity of area where these people live. So what we find is that ethnic diversity within neighborhoods where it exists in this society is not an economic threat, but rather associated with positive outcomes for both individuals and families. So what we find in terms of probabilities is, if we compare ethnic diversity versus homogeneity in this society, is that in ethnically diverse area, because we are comparing them with homogeneous area, there is negative or lower probability of respondents being in the lowest income category in this society. So simply the lower probability of being poor. And higher probability, this is above 0, to be in higher income categories. So what is the message? So this finding has very important implication for poverty reduction in this society, because in our sample we have around 25% of respondents who report no personal income and almost 10% having no regular family income. So because we are having a model, we can do simulations. So we simulated two extreme situations. It is full homogeneity versus full ethnic diversity of the neighborhoods versus full homogeneity of the neighboring areas. So having patches throughout the country organized in this way. What we find that there is an income gap of more than 20% between these two counterfactual situations in this society. So the message is that further homogenization from the existing diversity might impose decrease in personal and family incomes. Okay? So this is 3 years of research. Now, 2 years of research on one slide. We analyzed the data coming from the business sector. We focused on young companies in this society. And actually, this is where we got the idea to investigate the effect of ethnic diversity. Because I have brilliant colleagues working with me from UCL and Aston University, and one of them said, well, now ethnicity is a very important issue in economics. There is a lot of current research. Let's try to include this question into the survey. We did it. And although that wasn't our primary focus when we established the models of growth aspirations of young companies, we find very stable and significant effect of ethnic diversity on the growth aspirations of young companies. So growth aspirations mean what are their aspirations to increase their business, employment, and simply to grow in the future, which means that these aspirations are directly linked to the economic growth of this society. So what we have found is that diversity does matter for business development and future growth prospect of different regions in this society, because the effect of ethnic diversity again was positive. To predict one of your questions, when I presented this research, always I get question, probably you are capturing the effect of urban area in Bosnia. Well, we control for it in all these models. Then I say, well, you are capturing the effect of Sarajevo, international communities, their region, developed region, diverse region. We control regions, we control municipalities. So this is really what we believe is an exogenous clear, let's say, sort of clear. We can't be 100% sure ever, but we are quite sure that this is a clear effect of ethnic diversity, but not some other influences which you can probably mention. And of course, we control some other determinants, which I can explain if you have some questions. Okay? Now, moving to the sociological part, where I'm really afraid to present here. But we were inspired by floods in this country, which were in 2014, if you remember, around 30% of the country underwater, unforeseen floods, institution collapsed, infrastructure collapsed. But what I saw, and probably some of you at that time, is that people simply organized themselves. We have seen that ethnicity was not an issue. People were helping each other from different parts of the country. It was really amazing, and I simply recognized that it might be linked to the social capital which was activated during the crisis, and this happened just before we were doing one big survey in this country. So we again decided to include some questions to capture possibly these effects during the crisis, the effect of ethnic diversity, the crisis, which is natural crisis in this case. So we included these data, and what we have found again is a significant effect. But this is something which usually people like, because these are not numbers but pictures, easier to be understood. So these are the flooded areas, 2014, okay? Left-hand side picture. Right-hand side picture, we have the level of pro-social behavior. This is how I call it. I hope that sociologists will agree, which is a construct, a variable, which we got when we asked people what they did during the floods. Majority did something. But these are percentages. Not to 20%, not to 0.2 means 20% of people were involved in helping others. Green, 20 to 40, yellow 40 to 60, orange 60 to 80, and red 80 to 1%, which means that 80 to 100% of respondents from that particular municipality were doing something during the flood period. And we link the data to the map, to the Google map. Today we can do it electronically. I didn't draw it, so this is done. This is really linked to this is visual presentation of the data, and this is what we get. And I like to ask the audience what they see here if they compare these two maps. in the context of our topic, which is ethnic diversity.
Well, to a large extent, people who were not affected directly by the floods were engaged, among the most engaged ones.
Exactly. What would we expect to see here? Red area probably should be somewhere here, because these are people that
helped themselves, I think.
well, you know, it doesn't mean that everyone was under floods, but usually those in let's say that had houses around the rivers. So majority of municipalities still will be, you know, okay. But yes, there was a lot of support from the south of this country. And if we think about ethnic, let's say, dimensions or structure of this country, there are no any patterns in that respect. So this is interesting. And this is what I wanted to see, because we had a model of prosocial behavior, those people who engage to help others. We controlled for the, because this is now individual data, ethnic diversity of personal network. And we found that it was important in this period, in a sense that inter-ethnic networking, those individuals who had more ethnically diverse networks, they were doing more to help others during the crisis periods. Okay? So I summarize now 3 studies. There is a positive role of ethnic diversity in BH economy and society, and entrepreneurial growth aspirations, pro-social behavior, and individual and family economic well-being. Such robust findings should not be ignored by policymakers, because there is very strong policy message here that is ethnically more diverse areas in this country are stronger economically, with positive benefits for individuals, families, and businesses. Hence, policies of ethnic homogenization are economically harmful. Now let's see what informed data says about this finding. So we did in-depth interviews with entrepreneurs in this society. We asked them about informal networking. What we have found is that they are using informal networking widely in these societies. They are using informal networking for different purposes, but most often to avoid institutional deficiencies in this in the business sector, in these societies. They believe that larger informal networks are helpful for their business, but they also face, this is quite, we believe, is unique research, because this is what we did. They face quite high costs associated with informal networking. And these costs, if they are aggregated at the national level, in our simulations, sometimes were higher than the FDI inflow into these societies. One of the questions that we wanted to see is also the role of ethnic diversity in the informal networking of entrepreneurs in the Western Balkan region and in the Bosnia and Herzegovina. And now we have the data about the whole Western Balkan region. So in-depth interviews, and we were positively surprised that ethnic diversity is simply there in the informal networking of entrepreneurs. They are fully ethnically and inclusive. There are no problems doing business with others, fine. And you have some quotes here you can read. There are more. These are just some of quotes. Which we found is really a positive message even to the formal institutions, which often fail to be ethnically inclusive. Very good signal. Functioning on the ground. What is the problem with the informal institutions? So very good signal, positive signals, which mean this can function in these societies, and we identified this as a very good policy implication for these societies. So ethnic inclusion as positive informality, this is what we emphasize in the end. So we find that informal networking of entrepreneurs is fully tolerant towards ethnic and religious differences in the whole Western Balkan region. So not only in Bosnia, but in other societies that we investigated. And I forgot to mention, in this sample we included also Slovenia and Croatia as well. So Western Balkan region plus Slovenia and Croatia. So this is a positive feature of informality, sending a message that informal institutions or networks, actually these are informal practices because they already operate on the ground, are better able to accommodate ethnic and religious diversity than some formal institutions. We don't want to claim that all institutions in all societies at all levels, but very often we recognize these problems, especially in Bosnia and probably some other societies like Macedonia, Kosovo, etc. And this finding may provide a benchmark for formal institutions that are often characterized by ethnic dominance and exclusion, and which sometimes, we believe, send a wrong signal even to the international community, to the, let's say, to the people living in these societies. So that's why we believe that this finding from this project is very important for us and for others, and to be presented and promoted as a positive feature of informality. So I have some 15 more seconds. So as economists, we are always punctual because I have clock ticking here. So 10 more seconds. Thank you very much for your attention. I hope that you could understand all of this.